Welcome back here now to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk about our final segment on today's show. We're going to look at Jayden Daniels because I don't think he has been talked about too much this offseason. I wanted to check in on him and give you guys an update on how he's doing so far, and he was the second overall draft pick in this year's draft, so a lot of stock is being put in on him by the Washington Commanders to sort of lead them into this new era under Dan Quinn, under Cliff Kingsbury, under a new owner in Josh Harris. Now they have their franchise quarterback, and they are on the right path, but we have to see how this will all play out. Like I mentioned, drafted number 2 overall off of a Heisman winning season. Daniels should be the starter once the regular season obviously starts, but Dan Quinn has actually said today that they haven't technically named a starting quarterback, and Jayden Daniels hasn't played too much into the hype he has been receiving from other outlets in media. He still remains pretty humble about it, saying that he isn't a superstar just yet, and he has to go out there and prove it. But in my opinion, from what I've seen so far, I don't think he has received too much coverage, at least outside of Washington and outside of that DC area where I'm sure that's all they talk about. But on the national level, I think it's all been about Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, Drake May doing very well with the New England Patriots. I don't think I've seen too much about Jayden Daniels, so now focusing in on them for the time being. The Commanders started their mandatory minicamp this week on Tuesday, and Jayden Daniels, like actually most of these rookies, has been very impressive throughout OTAs, and now heading into mandatory minicamp, wrapping that up this week, leading into training camp on a good note. Jayden Daniels has been getting some praises and some good reviews around the organization, specifically from one Terry McLaurin, who mentioned that Jayden Daniels is really prepared and that there's an open door of communication between himself and Jayden Daniels so far over his preparation and just helping him out with anything that he is able to. On top of Terry McLaurin, other receivers like Olamide Zaccheaus has said that Jayden Daniels has handled himself so far like a veteran and has been overly prepared, very hardworking, trying to learn the playbook as best as he can. That's really been the main attribute that has been attached to Jayden Daniels, how prepared he is under Cliff Kingsbury and trying to learn his system. He has been very well prepared up until this point, and also Terry McLaurin touched on him being very intentional about his workout regimen, and his arm talent obviously is off the charts. More on Terry McLaurin and how he talked about Jayden Daniels. He said, "I love getting extra reps after practice with him. Just catching the top end of the deep ball. That's big for me. I get to track the ball over my shoulder, and it's also big for him because he gets used to dropping the ball in the bucket, and so far he has made some nice plays at practice from all the reports that have been coming out of the Commanders' practices, obviously, and have also included there some design runs where it seems like the Commanders are very intentional about trying to use all of Jayden Daniels' abilities and trying to use all of his skill set to be a danger out them and just bring another dimension to this offense, because over the last few years they've had new quarterbacks come in, but I think they've lacked that superstar X Factor ability that it's just reminding me of Madden in those X Factor abilities you see there. But regardless of that, the ability to just be a threat on the run, like a Lamar Jackson, like all these other quarterbacks that are able to move, like a Patrick Mahomes, and those like that, will definitely help out his progression if this next problem that I bring up, which I still think is the main problem, the wide receiver limitations are a concern for me, because I think the Commanders have done a decent job of addressing most of their problems this offseason, but in the wide receiver room, I still have my doubts just because I've talked about Terry McLaurin already, and he has been praising Jayden Daniels, but outside of him, it seems to be lacking a little bit in the ability to get open one-on-one, just having that talent to be a good number 2 or maybe a low-end number 1 receiver. I think those are big questions with the Washington Commanders. Their next best receiver last year, based on numbers and the stats that they put up, other than Terry McLaurin was Curtis Samuel, who obviously now is on the Buffalo Bills, and he recorded 613 yards, 62 receptions for only 4 touchdowns, and that's all right. It's not great, but as a number two receiver, the offense overall, the Commanders overall as a team weren't fantastic. So you would take 613 yards, but at the end of the day, you're still looking for more because you have to deal with the Philadelphia Eagles and their offense, the Dallas Cowboys to some extent. Also, you're a little bit unsure about them, but just across the NFC, you have a lot of great offenses that you have to compete with and put up points with. I don't think those numbers are going to cut it. And Terry McLaurin, I'm a big fan of him. I think he's very underrated, but he also needs more to kind of help him out and share the workload to make this Commanders offense as successful as it can be. And outside of Terry, you don't have too many other proven options other than Jahan Dotson, who is heading into his second year. Like I mentioned, Olamide Zaccheaus. Can he be a number two? Maybe, but he has been so far a number three receiver in this offense. It's putting a lot of pressure on Jayden Daniels and his ability to sort of be that X factor and almost carry them. Is he capable of doing it? That is yet to be seen. But like I mentioned with Jahan Dotson, Zaccheaus, Damiere Byrd, Luke McCaffrey, also a lot of uncertainty in this position group, and not to mention just a lot of young guys that are still learning their way around the NFL. How successful can an offense be with so much young talent and a young leader in terms of NFL experience? How successful can that be with a lot of newness also from a new offensive coordinator, new head coach? It's still pretty much up in the air, but to answer the question, can Jayden Daniels be successful with this receiving group? I think it just depends on what you determine what success is. If you think success is just improving on the record that they had last year, I think that's very much attainable. I think they can be better, but if success is anything more than that, trying to compete for a playoff spot, I don't think they will be successful. So, sort of managing your expectations that way, I think has to be done because this team is getting there. They're building. They are improving. I think they're the only team in that division that has improved other than the Philadelphia Eagles. And shots below the belt, I hope Jayden Daniels doesn't get scapegoated like Justin Fields did in Chicago. That's a good point. Both of them, very much similar skill sets, similar ability with how they play, obviously running the ball and being throwers of the ball also, obviously, because they're quarterbacks. But I think Jayden Daniels, up until now, is a little bit more developed in that aspect of his game, so he does have that going for him. But again, I also share your same feeling around the situation. If he gets scapegoated for it, that'll obviously hurt his development. With so much newness coming into this season for the Commanders, it's exciting, and people want to build up these expectations. Most of them may be unrealistic. I think people have to manage those expectations and realize that without one or without two really good receivers, they already have one in Terry, but they definitely need another one, and a backfield with Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, who will be better, but again, you're not really too sure, and that offensive line still has a lot of uncertainties as well. I've just named a bunch of things they have to work on. That's not typically what you see with a team that is competing for a playoff spot, so it's going to be exciting at some points. There's definitely going to be some bumps in the road. But I think people have to be patient with Jayden Daniels, really give him time because it's not as easy as it may seem at times with his skill set and being excited on Sundays to see him play. The Commanders haven't had a quarterback like this since RG3, and we all remember how that turned out after a season or two. He got injured, and then it just really fell off from there. You have another opportunity now with Jayden Daniels. Can he be successful? I think he certainly can be, but determining what success is for this group and figuring that out before will be the biggest point in all of this for the Washington Commanders. But they are on the right path. I'm excited to see them. I think they've done a great job this offseason in getting better in all aspects, but they're not quite there to compete for a playoff spot, in my opinion. But again, let me know what you guys think of Jayden Daniels and how the Commanders are building their team over there in DC. But for the meantime, that'll wrap it up for us on today's show. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X for more content. And also, if you want to see more of me and this show, check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the GSMC Podcast Network channel on YouTube for a lot more content around the NFL for you guys to enjoy. And as a final reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more NFL discussions and football conversations with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you guys once again for joining me, and I hope to see you guys all back here again with me tomorrow to wrap up this week.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.